Hi, everybody, and welcome to a bit of a mix-up collaboration with Community Pharmacy Nottinghamshire and Community Pharmacy Derbyshire for a podcast looking at DMS, Back to Basics. So Discharge Medicine Service, Back to Basics. I'm here with Amanda Alamanos, who is Deputy Chief Officer for Community Pharmacy Derbyshire, and Mike Jones, Pharmacist and Services Implementation Manager for Community Pharmacy Nottinghamshire. I'm sure you're all familiar with both of those people. I'm going to be asking Mike and Amanda a few questions over the next few minutes around DMS, because we want to make sure that as many contractors as possible are doing this well, and also just sort of have a bit of a deeper dig into DMS and why it is so important financially and for patient safety. So I'm going to start with Mike. Mike, can you tell everyone what actually DMS is and why it is so important in community pharmacy?
Yes, of course, and thank you for inviting us both to have this conversation with you, Kirsten.
Pleasure.
So DMS, Discharge Medicine Service, has been around for many years. It is, as we all know or should know, an essential service, and therefore is part of the contract. And so actually, it's always been an important service to deliver by all pharmacists and all pharmacy teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's important because it was introduced originally, because I can remember this, I'm that old, I can remember it because it was introduced to actually keep patients safe when they were discharged from hospital, and to make sure that they had a great conversation with a pharmacist so they could talk them through any new medicines that they were prescribed in hospital or any change of directions that had happened in hospital.
Okay.
And the second part really to that is it's important because of Amanda will come on to this, is because there is a significant number of readmissions to hospital that happen because medicines haven't been taken in the right way. So pharmacists were seen as an important player in making sure we kept patients safe. So I think that I just wanted to kind of, I'm not going to go into the details of how the service works at the moment, but that will come later. It's important to patients, it's important to community pharmacists, and it's important to community pharmacy teams. Important to patients because, as I said, it keeps them safe. It allows them to have that conversation that makes sure that they can take their medicines in a safe and appropriate manner. It's important to community pharmacies because actually the service does have, it is remunerated, and it's remunerated well. With the 3 steps, if they're completed, it's £35 per consultation. And it's important to community pharmacy teams because community pharmacists only really need to be involved in the process at the end, the 3rd step, where they have the final consultation with the patient. So all round, it's just important to community pharmacy in general as a service.
Absolutely, Mike. And I think I forgot to mention at the start of this, we're going to be doing a series of podcasts around DMS. To Mike's point there, we will dig deeper with some of the intricacies moving forward. And I think we can also share that 3-stage. There's a nice graphic I know that I've seen that will hopefully pop on the screen as we're talking about this now, so people can see that. So that's great, Mike. Thank you. Really interesting. Obviously, an essential service, which I think most contractors seem to be aware of. So that's great. Just to underline that. And I think the next over to Amanda, if we can sort of have a look, Amanda, what is the data at the minute around DMS telling us? What are some key points there that we can share with contractors?
So I think it's just worth mentioning that the data shows that there's, for Derbyshire in particular, there's a huge amount of referrals going through every month now. So Chesterfield and Royal Derbyshire Hospital are doing a huge amount of referrals in, and the large proportion of those are getting completed within the 72 hours, all three stages, and we've got some contractors doing really large volumes, so it shows that it works, and as Mike said, it's a good source of income for contractors as well. The data does show that there are still some pharmacies, and they are a very small minority, that are not completing or not actioning, should I say, referrals that are coming in, and that's not even timely or just not at all. What we're trying to do is get to understand why that is happening by having contact with those pharmacies to understand what are the barriers. And I think sometimes it's just about competing priorities. It's just a basic fundamental thing like that, really, is that trying to find time to do it all in the day is proving hard. So what we're looking to do is develop some sort of hints and tips and approaches to actually making sure that these are completed. And how are you approaching this in your pharmacy? Are you doing them ad hoc? Are you doing them on set days? Some of the feedback we've had back, which was unfortunate, really, was that actually they're done once a month, which is obviously not appropriate.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
Certainly not within 72 hours.
What we're trying to encourage is every day that somebody within the pharmacy, even if it's not the pharmacist, is logging in to have a look what DMS referrals have come through and what needs to be done, and what action needs to be taken, and even if they're just accepting those referrals, if they can't action them at that point in time or take them forward, just accepting them shows that they are in progress and not just hanging there, which it does give a great, from a look at the data, and actually from the trust's perspective, they can see that those referrals have not been actioned, so they're just hanging there. So if they're accepted, it just gives them a bit more reassurance that that the patient is going to get the support that they need. And come back to Mike's point as well around the other sort of forms of data, and just wanted to touch on some 406 readmissions of WID a month across the Midlands, and that's a huge amount. And in total that was 913,000, well, actually nearly 914,000 a month reduced in readmissions costs. Wow. If you think about the cost of a DMS compared to the cost of an admission, that it's huge. If we look at our trust, Chesterfield Royal Hospital, over £2 million in readmissions in 25-26, and UHDB 1.2 million. So huge savings for them. And what we need to do is to get, as LPCs, is what we do, and we work with our system colleagues as well, is that maybe there'll come a time that some of that money can be reinvested in services within primary care and within community pharmacy generally. And I think that's what the bigger picture that we need to look at, is that data is telling us that there are savings being made. So where we need to be getting a portion of that potentially in the future, and being consistent with DMS referrals shows that actually community pharmacy is really solid, and worth investing in.
Absolutely. Gosh, some huge figures there. So some great savings to be had. And I know we are going to welcome a couple of people from Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire trusts in the next podcast to talk to us a bit more information on that in a second. So yes, some huge savings, and a great point, Amanda, that perhaps in the future some of that could be given over to community pharmacy. That would be fabulous, because obviously we want the best funding possible for contractors. So I think that leads us quite nicely into next question from Mike. Mike, obviously we want to support contractors to provide the very best possible service to their patients, and obviously for themselves financially to make the most of this particular service. What would be your top tips when it comes to delivering a really great looking DMS?
Sure. Well, I guess the first thing to say is just to talk about the imperative for this service has changed, in the sense that with the development of neighbourhood health, the 10-year NHS plan, the whole focus of that is something called, you may have heard this whole thing about left shift, which basically means keeping people in their homes as long as possible, being treated as close to home as long as possible, and reducing admissions to hospital, because, as Amanda said, the costs escalate rapidly once there has been an admission.
Yes.
So now community pharmacy is playing on a much bigger playing field, in the sense that we can now be seen to make a much bigger contribution to the overall NHS plan. And I just think that's really important and really exciting, actually. So I think the imperative has changed. In terms of top tips, so, you know, we have spoken to, and I know Amanda has as well, we've spoken to a number of our pharmacy owners who do this particularly well. And I guess there's probably 3 or 4, possibly 5 actually, top tips I just want to rattle through, because these things, when they are done consistently, do make a difference.
Yes. Yep.
So the first thing is, it's already been mentioned, regular checks of the NHS Mail and Farm outcomes for referrals. The reason you have to check both is because sometimes referrals can come in by NHS Mail if Farm outcomes isn't playing. So it's important to build that into your processes through the day.
Yes.
And somebody every single day is actually requested to do that.
Yes, he's checking that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
every day, Mike. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Not once a month as we just heard that some people are doing.
Precisely. So I think that's definitely the first. And the second one, because this really is, because the team as a whole can get involved with this, I think briefing staff about what we are trying to achieve, the why, if you like, around Discharge Medicine Service is really important. And linked to that, it's the development of those team members to access Farm outcomes, give them a log on, access NHS Mail, give them a log on.
Yes.
Too many times I've had the feedback, oh, well, nobody in the pharmacy can actually access Farm outcomes today, which it's not an excuse.
No, no.
So actually, it's an exciting development opportunity for the team, and having them understand what the process is all about and how they can be involved, I think is really important. It goes without saying, I think, the administration of this is a little clunky. There is no doubt, because as we know, the link between Farm outcomes and the My Service portal isn't there like it is with blood pressure service and contraception service. It is not automatic. And we know that some pharmacy owners don't actually know that.
Okay.
So getting the administration right, the process right through the day, but making sure then that the records are done, that the at the end of the month, making sure that you can claim for those consultations that you've done is fundamental, and keeping a tally of how many first, second and third stages you've done.
Stages, yeah, yep.
Because you won't receive £35 unless you've done all 3 stages.
No.
So I think that's the third point. Writing, and I guess to kind of underpin all of that, is writing a decent SOP that supports what I've just said, and also changes as you get feedback on how the process is working in the pharmacy.
Yes.
Because sometimes I think SOPs are written because it's a contractual obligation. They sit on the shelf, but they may not be reviewed, and they may not be. Absolutely,
Mike. They're put in a drawer and nobody looks at them for some time. Yeah, they need to be reviewed. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think finally, and this is a big plea, and the reason it's a big plea is the trusts are not always getting it right.
Okay.
And sometimes data is left off. For example, which ward, which pharmacist has done the referral, the contact numbers, etc. If you are seeing, my request is, if you are seeing that, please let me know, and please let Amanda know, because then with the contacts that we have at the hospital, we can feed that back, improve the overall experience and process, not just in the hospital, but really for community pharmacy. So we help get it right first time. Those would be my top tips.
That's fantastic. They're all extremely useful. Yeah, and a great point about that. If contractors do have any feedback on that, please let Mike and Amanda know, and they will be able to support with that, with the contacts that they have. And I think that's something we can perhaps look at in the next episode. So last kind of question before we sum up and talk about the next episode, Amanda. And I think we've touched on a few of these things over the course of the last few minutes, but what are the implications of not actioning DMS referrals? So obviously there's going to have an impact on the patient, it's going to have an impact on the pharmacy, and ultimately probably the profession itself. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And it's an essential service at the end of the day. So I think, contractors need to be mindful of the fact that, it's not that they're looking every day, but there is PPV done. All it takes really is a trust to flag in the data with the commissioner that they are not completing or not actioning DMS referrals, and it could well follow then there is some sort of remedial breach notice or some action taken and some sanction of some kind. Which would be really unfortunate, because that's not where we want to go with this. I mean, we obviously would hope to be involved in those conversations. And come back to your point about those regular contacts, I have bi-monthly meetings with Chesterfield UHDB, and we talk through all the concerns. We know that Nerve Centre has been implemented with Chesterfield, and it's coming in September for UHDB, and that's their referral process or electronic system. I'll be honest with you, I'm not an IT buff, so I don't know all the details. But I know that the feedback we've had from some committee members and some contractors is that it has been a bit detrimental to the process of receiving referrals in pharmacy. So some of that information, as Mike mentioned, as that they were used to seeing, they're not now seeing, or they're not able, the trust aren't actually physically able to send it over. So there are escalation points with the trust. If you've got any concerns or any worries about what you've had through, then pick up the phone and contact them. Chesterfield said they have seen an increase in the amount of calls that they're getting in, but they understand that because it's been a change of process. So coming back to the point about what it's the impact on the patient and their expectations, and the chances are they're probably going to be told that there's been a referral made to community pharmacies, and then they're set an expectation as well. And so and the income associated with it's easy winnings. Would you agree, Mike? To get to do those referrals and to get that money banked. To me, it seems as though there's an absolute no-brainer in completing in these referrals, and yet, like I say, we're still seeing some contractors that just are not grasping it. And I think it's just about it's setting our stall out really as a profession. I say we. I'm not actually a pharmacist, so sorry, Mike, your profession. But like I said, what we don't want to do is get trusts to lose faith in the process, and stop sending the referrals and start then signposting patients and you can't claim or they're doing strange random things that we see elsewhere. I mean, to be fair, we have to be really mindful of the fact that in Notts and in Derbyshire we do really well. In Lincolnshire they get no DMS referrals at all. The trusts will not engage. So we've managed some really great gains, and what we don't want to do is tarnish that. So this is why it's so important that they're actioned within 72 hours, and if there's a reason why that they can't be completed, then make the claim, close it down, put the information onto the patient record, and finish it off. We see so many just hanging around in the data because they haven't been closed down properly. And again, I think, as Mike said, the claiming process has been a bit concerning for some of the pharmacies. They're not really understood how they claim, when they claim, etc. I mean, some of the questions that I'm not sure if you're going to come on to it, Kirsten, some of the questions that we've asked, and we did the poll and asked some of the questions. Some have indicated, some on the responses, that they don't get their locums to read the SOPs around this. Locums don't have access to DMS referrals, that the staff aren't really up to speed with some of this as well. And I think those are really quick things that you can change that will make a big impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a key one. It's a team effort, isn't it? And as Mike sort of alluded to there, if there's a couple of people within the pharmacy that can be checking DMS referrals every day, so pharma outcomes, checking NHS mail, it's their job, and it's a very, very important task financially and for the benefit of the patients. So
we appreciate that not all pharmacies have got huge amounts of staff. We know
sure,
that
of course,
so many pharmacies operate differently, but there's very few pharmacies that operate alone. So just utilize the skill set of the people that you've got, and as Mike said, develop them, because people are more, and also actually retention tells you that you're more likely to retain staff if you develop them.
Absolutely, yeah, and support them.
And we have, sorry, just to build on that, we have to remember when you boil this down to its basics, we have to remember that as pharmacists, we are trained to do this work. There is no question about that. We are the experts in pharmacology. We're the goalkeepers in the healthcare process. We actually are the ones that allow those medicines to go out and be used safely. So there is no excuse for any pharmacist to ever say they should not, could not, have not done or completed these consultations. And given the financial pressures that we have at the moment, actually receiving funding for something that you do in your day job for one consultation, I just think is a no-brainer.
Absolutely, Mike.
Yeah. I can't stress that enough. And going back to what we talked about in terms of patient safety, we ran a webinar on DMS 2 years ago, and the story that came from NUH at that time was about a patient that was discharged into the community, didn't have a Discharge Medicine Service consultation, but they were discharged on risperidone because they changed basically the blood thinning medication from warfarin to risperidone. That patient was then dispensed risperidone. That was written on their prescription and that was dispensed. That patient then took the risperidone, but they also went home and took their warfarin. And 3 days later, you're never going to guess what happened. They ended up back in hospital, very seriously ill. And I realise that is one extreme here, where patients have an experience that brings them close. It's almost like a near-death experience. I realise that's one end. But actually, if you start at that end and work back, you go, well, that's what I'm trying to stop. That's my job as a pharmacist. That's what I mean by goalkeeper. So I think I just wanted to build on what Amanda was saying, really.
No, and I think it might, if we look at it, it's absolutely so valid. Like you say, this service hasn't been developed out of nowhere. This is within the clinical skill set of every pharmacist. So, and like I say, and you get an additional remuneration for it. We've also got to focus on the fact that the national policy is changing. So everything is around integrated neighbourhoods. And the majority of these integrated neighbourhoods now, I mean, we have to face the fact we have an ageing population. The majority of DMS data that you see are our older population. So actually supporting them through through actioning and of DMS referrals and these consultations is so fundamentally important. If you look at the frailty agenda generally and falls, I mean, medicine's adherence, we know, is fundamental to that. So many people fall due to like you say, not taking the medication properly or taking too much, not taking enough. And it's a massive agenda. So I think it just seems like sometimes maybe it's just another service and it's a small little thing to do, but actually the ripple effect for it is huge.
Huge.
And I think that's why we really wanted to do this today. Just to try and help support contractors with taking some of this forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've covered absolutely loads today, which is brilliant. And I think if I can just sum up, and I can invite Amanda and Mike to add if they want to. DMS, it's an essential service, and I think we know that most contractors are aware of this. Each DMS referral must be actioned within that 72-hour time frame. As Mike and Amanda have talked about, once you've actioned it, great, then you can start to move on to the next steps. But please make sure you're actioning each referral within that 72-hour framework. We know as well that contractors, you still have to manually make DMS payment claims, and that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. But obviously we will update on that as and when we know any different. Also, remember the impact on our profession. If you're not doing DMS well, it will reflect badly. And I think it was Amanda who said, look, we've got the trust and the confidence of the trusts. We don't want to tarnish that in any way. It would reflect badly on everybody, and that's not fair for the people who are doing this well. So, just consider the impact. Amanda just mentioned there, DMS is playing a key role in frailty management, which we know is a huge element of the neighbourhood health plan moving forward. So it's really important for those people that they are getting a good service here. And there are multiple benefits to patients and pharmacists. Obviously, just from the clinical perspective, you talked there about, Amanda, using your skills, and obviously the commercial aspect for pharmacy, but also for patients, giving them a great service. There could be somebody coming to you with DMS that maybe hasn't visited the pharmacy before. That person could end up becoming a patient for life. We talk about this at quite a few junctures. So it's a great opportunity to build, obviously, your existing relationships with patients, but also develop some new ones. I don't know whether either of you want to add to anything there, if I've missed anything.
I think that's a really good summary, Kirsten.
Good, brilliant,
Yeah.
Thank you. I got it right. And I just want to say thank you to both of you for joining us today. I think it's been really useful, and we'll give a contact detail for contractors if they want to get in touch with either of you with any questions. But I think just and finally, we have mentioned it a couple of times in our next podcast, which will also feature Amanda and Mike. We will have some guest speakers. We'll have Lauren Doxey, who is the Chief Pharmacy Technician at UHDB. And also we'll be joined by Stacey Sadler, who is a pharmacist with NHU, just to talk about how best you can work with your local trust, how to have those good conversations and make some good contacts. So we'll be looking at recording that in the next few weeks, and we will roll that out. So thank you very much for listening. Thanks again, Amanda. Thanks, Mike. And we will speak and hear with you very soon. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Kirsten.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Bye.
Bye.